Welcome to the Ultimate Bloons TD6 strategy series, where I'm going to be showing you strategies for every single tower from the Dart Monkey to the Beast Handler and every single path in between. This will show you how to diversify your setup and get better, along with seeing some stats, tips and tricks, and all of the strategies for every single one of the towers. And although that the series is geared more towards Chimps mode, this will also show you a lot of tips and tricks that apply to the standard game and will allow you to win with a new style. Alright, so starting off with the mortar, we're going with the top path, which has the biggest one, the big one, and the heavy shells. Or no, wait, that's the shell shock. They do the same thing, who cares? So starting with the shell shock and the heavy shells too, I guess I'll mention that they're not really used. I'll talk about that later. Big one, you can use this for mid-game pierce. It's great for that. And the biggest one does late-game heavy damage. So both really cool towers with the tier 4 and tier 5, so we'll explore. So basically with the heavy shells and the shell shock, I guess I'm talking about both of them now. You can get these and they do good pierce in the early game, but they really can't scale into anything unless you're going for a big one or artillery battery subsequently after. But the big one, on the other hand, does have a lot of pierce, and it will fall off when it gets to the super ceramics a bit, but you're going to be using this guy for a mid-game carry, and he's going to do that job very, very well. The biggest one, on the other hand, will ramp everything up from the big one, doing more damage and all, and has some cool effects with different cross paths, so we'll be checking that out soon. So basically, when it comes to the cross path, I don't really know how to describe this well. You could either go 520 or 502. They have a bit of a difference. I personally find 502 to be better with the Bernie stuff cross path, but the 520 does give you more stuns when it comes to the tier 4 and the tier 5. When you ramp up attack speed with a bunch of buffs, the stun is also getting a lot better because it hits a lot more frequently, so you're going to be able to stun a lot of balloons and do some good damage. But on the other hand, the 502 just does a lot more damage. Its stun isn't as good, but it just one-shots a lot of things. I personally find it to be better, so I will be doing the examples with 502, but 520 isn't really that bad of a cross path either. You could do whichever or, but I just prefer the other one. Maybe you could try them both out and see what you like better. And then for the tier 3, you just get 320. So for the buffs, we definitely want to Berserker Brew buff the big one and the biggest one. And when you get biggest one, an overclock too will help out a lot. This will make this thing go super insane and just do a lot more. If you have 520, its stun is going to go crazy. And then all mortars are good on maps with bends and loops, but for the biggest one, unlike the other two, the biggest one, its blast radius is a lot larger, so these bends can be bigger and it has a lot more leeway. So its strengths is that it has high pierce, it's better on longer maps, destroys heavy rounds, but its weakness is that it's pretty map dependent and it falls off on harder maps a lot of the time. And when it comes to heroes, you definitely can use Striker Jones for all of the buffs that it will give, but it could also be paired with another general hero and used elsewhere. It just won't be as strong. So our objectives that we're going to look at for these rounds are going to be the biggest one in the late game and big one in the mid game. So we're going to be starting off by trying to go for a shell shock pretty early, as well as getting Striker Jones. To do this, you're going to often have to get something for starting out. Well, not often, you are going to have to get it because you can't really start that well with a Mortar or Striker Jones. So I'm just going to get a 301 or 302 ninja, I forget here, just one of them. That's going to beat the first rounds, and then I can build into Striker Jones and the mortar. Now the shell shock is going to give us good pierce in the early game, which is going to make things really easy. So I can grab that, I can put it in the center where there's a lot of loops and overlaps. Bends are good too, so mortar is going to be doing really, really well on this map. It can also do pretty well on other maps too, more generic maps, but they're going to specifically excel on these types of maps, which will make your games a lot easier. If you come across one of these kinds of maps where there's just a lot of loops and bends in a particular area, you can get a mortar there and it's going to do so much. So Shell Shock's going to do pretty good in the early game. However, if I was just like looking for something to do Pierce in the early game, there are way better options that are going to do stuff later on too. But when it comes to like the Shell Shock, it's going to fall off like immediately after. So we're going to have to watch out for round 40. We have our Pierce kind of taken care of, so I'm just going to get this Arcane Magistry. I was going to Alk buff, but I was busy watching my Twitch stream and I forgot to do that. Luckily, we were able to beat round 40 without it otherwise, but normally I would have just gotten that Alk buff, so we would have beaten 40. Alternatively, if a map calls for it, you could get a Mauler there. I'm going to showcase that in the next run. That will help out. You can use like Striker Jones, Maulers, and Assassins to push forward, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, so about this time, if you had the what is it? It's the Shell Shock. Yes, that's the upgrade. See, I even forget what it is. About this time, it would start to fall off, but we're going to be moving this guy up to a big one, and then I'm also going to be getting the Arcane Spike there too. So with the big one, that's going to be doing a lot. I'll grab a Signal Flare for decamo, because I can do that. You could just get like Camo Village too. You're going to need camo anyways, so we're going to have that, and then I'm going to get the Arcane Spike. So because this does a lot of Pierce and we'll just deal with all the Bloons, you don't really need to care about Bloons anymore for the mid game. You're just going to need some Moab damage. So we're going to be fitting this guy with something that just does a lot of Moab damage, and you can set it on strong. That could be, again, a Village and a bunch of Assassins. That's a great combination. They're going to work well with Striker Jones too, or for this map, because that obviously isn't going to work that well, I'm going to grab that Arcane Spike, and that's just going to do a lot of Moab damage. There's a bunch of other things that you can do. I think for the one, or in another episode, I showcase Comanche defense, so you might see that later too. That helps out for the mid game a lot of times. With Mortars, you can do just a whole bunch of things, but as you can see, these rounds are being totally destroyed. Whichever crosspath you get on your Mortar, these rounds are just going to be destroyed. So with all of that going on, we're going to be pushing into later rounds, and you can also use this as just a mid-game save up. You don't have to go into biggest one with this. You can just use the tier 4 Mortar to give you Pierce in the mid game to allow you to save up for something kind of crazy. So if you're going to need like a complete mid game carry, like if you're going for a tier 5 that just doesn't really do anything in the mid game at all, you can get like a combination with Big One and Moab damage dealer. For super cheap, you can get a lot of effectiveness. Just for example, in this, I'm going to be pushing all the way until I die, and it's going to be on round 82 where we're going to have like $60-something thousand saved up. So it's not like this is weak. It's going to do very well for a mid game carry. So with all of that, you could buy whatever crazy tower you want if you wanted to, but in this case, I'm just going to retry the round and get the big one, or the biggest one, I mean. Anyways, with that, we're still gonna have the Berserker Brew on it. We're gonna overclock that, and now we're gonna be a little bit weak to DDTs and definitely very weak to round 100. So in order to counter that, I'm just gonna get a Sabo, and then I'm going to get a First Strike. If you have the 5-2-0 Crosspath, that tends to do a little bit better against DDTs because the stun really helps out a lot. So if I have the 502, that will take out like the heavy rounds very easily, like a lot easier. But what I noticed, you definitely are going to want a Sabo to be able to help with the DDTs. Either that, or you're going to pair it with like another tier 5 damage shower. Going for Archmage on top of this would also be a pretty interesting combination. I'm just going to leave a lot of my cash spare so that you can kind of work around with it and do other things. Again, this is on an intermediate map where the biggest one is going to excel, so it's not like we're going to have any challenges. As you can see there, the DDTs do make it a little bit far. I do get that First Strike for around 100, so that's going to be pretty cool. But just overclock this thing when a tough round comes in, and you should be good. You also have the Striker Stun and the Striker level 20 ability. The level 20 ability is going to give the Mortar double damage, so if there's ever a tricky round, you can use it there, and it's going to do a lot more. And then the Striker Stun's also great. It just stuns a lot of stuff. Really underrated ability. And there's a lot of things that you can do with Striker Jones that people don't really realize. So right there, maybe the Striker Stun would have been useful. I wasn't paying attention, but I bring all my abilities in for around 98, and things get destroyed. Sabo, definitely crucial there on 99. Now I can just use my ability, and you can also use that other Mortar ability to have your mouse, or if you're on mobile, your finger go over it. And I use that, and I first strike the bad. It's all good. So now let's go on to the second one. Again, we're going to have a early game starter. I'm going to go for a 302 NG this time with an 023 dart. Change things up a bit. Oh, and I guess a 100 sniper there. It's a little bit expensive for the early game, but it's very effective. It's just going to make sure, especially for a trickier map like Underground, this is a pretty fairly placed advanced map. We're going to have no problems, and then I'm going to be able to get a biggest one later on. So again, we're doing the same kind of mentality of going for a good tower that does a lot of Moab damage, and then pairing that with the big one for the mid game so I could get the biggest one later on. Either or I could do that to just save up to another random tier 5. So I'm going to be going for the Operation Dartstorm. Just put that in the center. He's going to be doing a lot of work. Going to work out great for this map too. I'll get a village in there, just get camo, drums, outbuff this thing, and then I'll get the Mortar there too working, so it's going to be very good. The Operation Dartstorm's another great tower that I don't really see people, actually I kind of see people using a lot. I take that back, I guess. I do frequently get a lot of comments of people talking about using Operation Dartstorm, but it's definitely a really great tower if you can use it right. And when I mean use it right, it literally all it is just being able to find it, being able to place it in a good flight pattern where it goes over the track. Center path with aces kind of suck, because they're so inconsistent. You just want that consistency, but once you get the consistency with the good figure 8 or figure infinite flight path, it will do a lot of work. So you're going to be just taking out a lot of these rounds, like 75 is going to go down. Should have used my Striker ability a little bit more. They got a little bit close, but that's because this map is a bit trickier. But that was pushing way past what I needed to actually buy biggest one. I could get Sky Shredder if I wanted now, but instead of doing Sky Shredder, that Sky Shredder would also be a very cool option that would allow you to win very easily. I'm going to get the biggest one, so we're going to have that. And now we're just going to get some support for that too, all the good stuff. Throw in a Relentless Glue there too, because that's going to be doing a lot, very crucial, going to help slow down DDTs, which will be much needed for this map now that it's a lot shorter. So I have the 502 Crosspath again this time, just because why not, and I'm going to save up a lot of money, so now you can get all the support. So there comes the overclock, kind of deciding where to put that Relentless Glue. I get primary training too, just so it has a bit more range and pierce, so it can fit up at the top. And this time I'm going to be bringing in a cool synergy that you can use with the Pop and Awe. This is both applies to the Pop and Awe and the biggest one, which is bringing it with Moab Eliminator. So the Pop and Awe will take out some heavy rounds and DDT rounds pretty well. The biggest one does the same thing, might need a little bit more help for the DDTs, but round 100 and some ZOMGs on shorter maps can be a bit tricky. On longer maps, biggest one will do much better just because of the way that the tower works. It's kind of the same with Bloons Solver. It can solo around 98 on even some intermediate maps, same with the biggest one. But when the shorter maps come out, it starts to fall off a lot more. That means you can't use it. It's just that you need to get a little bit more creative with your solution. So pairing it with Moab Eliminator will help out a lot. This will guarantee round 100 is going to go, because with just the biggest one, you aren't going to have enough first damage to be able to just first strike round 100 on shorter maps. So we're going to be stepping up with the Moab Eliminator. It's going to do a lot of damage with Striker Jones, and we can spam that ability, and we'll take out the ZMGs too. So just like that, all of these rounds are taken care of, and we're just going to destroy round 100 very easy. And especially because we can't even use water on this map, that Moab Eliminator came quite in clutch there. So there's the biggest one, big one, and biggest one. Very cool towers.
Thanks for watching. If you want to help out the channel, you can check out these new videos, like and subscribe for more content, support the channel by becoming a member, and joining the Discord to chat with the community. Bye!